scene this week so that we may bring you this special presentation.
Most of my friends drink to the point of just being obliterated, and most of them pass out.
You just want to let loose and have fun and be irresponsible.
Definitely, whoever drinks the most is the most respected. It's sad but true.
They are drinking more than ever, and there are a lot of bad consequences.
It's just that you do things that you wouldn't normally do.
It's an interesting thought, isn't it? Whoever drinks the most is the most admired or most respected. Good afternoon, I'm Marty Levin. We are here today to talk about alcohol, but specifically in its relationship to young adults, college-age students. That means some of them can legally get it once they're over 21, at least in the state of California. Many of them are 18, 19, and 20, which means it's not available to them theoretically here, although it would be on spring break and on weekends in Mexico. It's not the same old problem that you've heard about most of your life. Oh, alcohol's bad, don't drink and drive, have a designated driver. It is a whole new set of behaviors that scientists and physicians are starting to see, trying to measure, and trying to figure out in terms of policy, both at the universities, at the police departments, in terms of public policy and health, what to do about. And we have a whole group of experts and a lot of folks here who are in high school or have made the transition, to college, to talk about this today. A lot of it in conjunction with a summit that the county is doing. It's a yearly event to deal with alcohol and drug problems, and this year, this is the focus. It is college-age drinking. Let me introduce our first two guests. Sandra Hoover is a PhD. She's from the Institute for Public Strategies, an expert in this field, and you were program director with the American Medical Association on college drinking. And Sal Garcia just made the transition from high school to college, so he has seen some of what he expected to come true, and I presume some things you didn't expect to come true. But Sandra, let me start with you. Could you define this problem a little bit? Because we already know that it ranges into the billions of dollars in terms of social costs.
Yes, it's a much bigger problem than we realize. It's not just a few kids out having a lark. People often depict this as just a harmless rite of passage. But the latest economic report in the San Diego County points out that we spend over $1.8 billion per year on alcohol and drug problems, much of which comes from underage and young adult drinkers.
But if I go back to, or we both go back to when we were in college, people drinking in college is nothing new. What's new about the behavior now that it's getting as much attention as it is?
I think that the concern now, the behavior is different. It's not just drinking to, oh, maybe you'll feel better, have a little buzz, and be able to socialize better, but it's drinking to get drunk, or as many of the students say, let's get wasted.
Mm-hmm. And have been successful doing it, apparently.
Very,
So what did you find out? First, tell me what you expected as you got out of high school, what you thought the college experience was going to be like. And you went to Southwest, that's where you are now. What did you expect, and what happened to you?
I currently attend Southwestern, and what I expected from high school to college, and even though it's a community college, was a lot of drinking, and I've or just heard stories about it, and basically it's kind of true. People that I've talked to, at least the ones that I have, are big partiers, and they were speaking about going to Rosarito and going to all the clubs over there, and just seeing a lot of people doing stuff that they thought wouldn't regularly be done.
What did you think about the young people who were in the open to this program talking about people drinking to get wasted and those who drink the most are the most respected and whatnot? You find that to be the case?
Probably. I don't do it myself, but I've heard stories and the stuff they do just to earn respect.
Sandra, there's always been a core group, and I guess the number varies from 4 or 5% to 10%, of people who are going to be alcoholic or drug addicts who are going to fundamentally have a problem with a variety of substances, one or more. Why is this problem now gone beyond that core group? We've had them forever in this country, those who are going to fail in trying to successfully use alcohol or drugs. Why has it gotten to the point where the numbers are so big?
Well, I think a good part of the problem is that alcohol is promoted as glamorous, as the means to success. There are messages about drinking alcohol everywhere. It's very easy to get, and it's cheap.
What about the attitude of parents regarding alcohol? I mean, there was always a sense, I guess, certainly when I was in high school and I was in college, that quote unquote hard drugs. Oh, this is awful, this is a problem, it's going to be the end of your life and whatnot. But people didn't think that about a beer, didn't think that about you know, a small glass of whiskey or vodka or whatever it is.
Often people don't think of alcohol as a drug, but it is a drug, and it's our most dangerous drug. And I think that's part of the problem, is that people tend to dismiss it as, oh, it's harmless, a few beers, what's the cost to that? But as I said earlier, it costs us a great deal. We see our public safety and public health resources diverted to dealing with these problems. People are at risk, as you know. Most people would recognize we're at risk for drinking under the influence, but they're also at risk for increased violence and crime and vandalism.
Now, one of the statistics, let's define binge drinking. For men, which would include older teenage boys, it's 5 drinks in a row, right? Mm-hmm. That's the working definition. For women, college-age women or above, 4 drinks in a row, although the alcohol affects women differently than it does men. And the smaller amount of alcohol, the 4 versus the 5, I presume is the general sense of most women are going to weigh less? And the metabolism of alcohol is different?
It's different, yes, that's correct.
So we're talking about somebody lining up 5 drinks and just downing them, just like that, bang, 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 bang.
Very likely. They're drinking, and it's not just that they're stopping at 5 drinks or at 4 drinks. Often what they're doing is they're drinking a great deal more than that. A number of college students that I've talked to who engage in binge drinking are drinking 10 or 12 drinks in a row.
Women have caught up to men in this binge drinking. In some cases have exceeded men in numbers. In some ways have more trouble with alcohol than men do. And the question is why? Is it an offshoot of the women's movement? They certainly caught up with smoking and the consequences of smoking. And now women in college have caught up in drinking. We'll talk more about that after a break.
23% of the sexually active teens and young adults report having unprotected sex because they were using alcohol or drugs at the time. Alcohol is involved in 90% of campus rapes. Schoolers binge drink at least once a month. In San Diego, 24% of high schoolers report binge drinking in the last 30 days. Approximately 40% of college students are binge drinkers.
And I guess that's the number that is so staggering. It used to be if you lived in a fraternity or a dormitory, there'd be a couple of people that you always knew drank too much. Now we're talking about 40% of the college population and a large percent of the high school population sitting down and essentially starting out that way. Not losing control because of an addiction to alcohol, but just starting out to really get snocked and spend their time that way. Dr. Tom Cosgrove is with us. He's the Dean of Students at the University of San Diego, and you were a little bit ahead of the curve in starting a alcohol prevention program. Is that a fair label for it? In 1978? Mm-hmm. And what has happened since then?
Well, as was said earlier, I think we, like every other university, are noticing an increase in the amount that a certain number of students are drinking, but not all students. That 40, the reverse side of that 40% we just looked at is 60, and there is some question about the emphasis on the 40 is actually creating an exaggerated norm of how all college students are.
Mm-hmm. What kinds of things have you done to try and make alcohol awareness programs work, and to what steps has the university taken in terms of drinking on campus, alcohol at campus functions, parties, etc.?
Well, we've actually done a lot of things. A number of years ago, we took a close look at our policies and got tougher on fines, for example, for violations of minor in possession and drinking in the halls. We do allow, we have a procedure for allowing alcohol at certain events, but it's with ticketing and careful ID checks and those and there are very few of those events. But one of the things we've done recently that's related to those numbers is about that perception. In our orientation program, we tell the students the truth. We know that the college students arrive on campus with an exaggerated perception of how much drinking there is. Mm-hmm. For example, we asked our, in one of our surveys, what percentage of students did the entering students think drank once a week? Their guess was 97%. Mm-hmm. The reality is 43%. So we share some of that information with them as part of our orientation program. We have a whole, hour-and-a-half session on the issue with students talking. But part of that is trying to clarify that exaggerated norm.
So really the program's built around this is reality, not that alcohol's bad, you should never have a drink, et cetera, et cetera. Let me introduce Jane Clifford, who's a columnist with the Union Tribune, but you're also the editor of the family section, and it is in that section where your column appears. The statistic I mentioned in the last segment is apparently very true, which is that women have caught up to men in this binge drinking category and in the use of alcohol, and have suffered the consequences of it very much like men, and in some cases more. At a couple schools in the Boston area, I know, the number of women being admitted to the hospital because of binge drinking now exceeds that of the number of men. Why do you suspect that is?
I think that a lot of young women now think that they are equal to boys in every way, and I think that they're not put off at all by some of the norms that my generation still used to cling to, and that they can do whatever they want to do. And if the guys think that's cool to drink, well, they're going to do it too. They see no lines between the genders now.
And what conclusion do you draw from that? I mean, I'm wondering where you go from here with that kind of
I think
issue.
you go with girls the same way you do with boys. I think that if you wait until your child goes to college to start talking about how you're afraid they're going to drink too much, it's way too late. That those conversations have to go on when they're still young enough to actually pay attention to what you say. And since I have a high school senior and next year a high school freshman, I know that I really have very little control over what he does now. I mean, we play the game. He respects me. He and his dad, he does what he's asked to do in most cases. But I'm kidding myself if I think that I can actually, I'd have to be in the car with him every minute to be sure that he wasn't doing what I don't want him to do.
Which goes well beyond just drinking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's actually, we're to the point where it's not what we don't want him to do. We want him not to want to do it.
Yeah, I have a similar experience because I have a 17-year-old. And what Tom was saying is very, very true. When you ask them to do an estimate of the number of friends who drink or people that they know that drink, the numbers are very, very skewed. Jennifer Steffen is with us. You are a senior?
Correct.
Rancho Bernardo High School. What did you think about what they said in terms of the way high school students think it is and the way it really is?
Well, yeah, I'd agree with that because alcohol is just kind of normalized amongst teenagers. They think it's just a normal thing to do.
The industry, meaning the alcohol industry, is going to come out with a study tomorrow that's going to say, in essence, that most people underage get the alcohol from family or from friends. Meaning that just a small percentage, I believe the number they're going to quote is around 15%, actually manage to go into a store and buy it with false ID or buy it because the clerk will sell it to them. How easy is it to get? Because I've had high school students say, you know, it's much easier to find drugs around a campus than it is to find alcohol.
I would disagree with that. Alcohol is fairly easy to get, and alcohol is always available through adults. It's somehow an adult was involved in giving the alcohol to a student.
Do you know students, with no names obviously, whose parents say, you know, if they're going to drink, I'd just assume that they do it at home and then provide them as much alcohol as they want, or provide alcohol at parties where other people's children are participating?
Yeah, I've got a couple of friends that are like that, but the problem with that is if they're drinking at home, they're most likely also drinking somewhere else.
They're also driving somewhere else.
Yeah.
And also, if we take religious issues out of this, it's also against the law to provide alcohol, even if it's in your own home. Now, you're all high school students. Anybody have a different experience from what you just heard Jennifer say? Tell us your name, man.
My name's Ashley.
And where do you go to school?
Point Loma High.
And am I standing in Ashley's way? No, good. What's the story there? Is it any different from the experience at Rancho Bernardo?
Well, at my school, I consider alcohol not as much available at maybe Rancho Bernardo High School, because to us, alcohol it's for old people. And
like me?
No. Alcohol's been, it's a like more at your house, what you do like on a Saturday. That's what you're gonna get wasted completely. Like you do it at someone's house, you don't go anywhere after that.
But here's my question for you, actually. If you go to a friend's house and they are completely wasted and they're staggering around and slurring their words and all of the other things, getting sick, everything that comes with it, do they think it's cool? Do their friends think it's cool? Or do their friends say, you know, you don't look good? This is stupid.
They think it's funny.
think
like
it's funny.
That's your fault. That's what you did, and it's funny. We're gonna laugh at them, but we're gonna make sure that they're okay. We're not gonna. We've heard the stories of kids letting other kids just go to sleep and then they never wake up again. You don't want to lose your friend like that. You want to keep them alive, and you're gonna convince them any other way. You can't do that every day.
Forgive me for saying it this way, but at 16 or 17, I'll ask Dr. Seiss when we move on to that, but how would you know if somebody's dealing with acute alcohol poisoning? You don't, do you?
You don't know.
You don't. Dr. Cosgrove, the experience around the universities the same? I'm wondering about the peer pressure directed at other people who get falling down drunk, whether it's in the dorm, whether it's in the fraternity, or whether it's in a bar near school.
You know, Marty, that's one of the things that our students are concerned about. Last year we had several series of discussions with students, and they're not concerned about drinking per se. They're concerned about those kind of behaviors where people are going to do damage to themselves and others. And we actually have a fairly large group of students who work together and go into residence halls and other places on campus and talk to groups about those kinds of things. Another group has started a designated driver program. So they're concerned about safety, and that's where you can connect with students in terms of what they can do. They're not going to respond to there's nothing wrong with drinking per se, you know, but it's much more realistic than that.
And that's really the issue today that we're trying to address. How do you address these issues from medical policy, educational policy, and public policy? We'll continue that discussion after this.
Leading causes of teen death, accidents, homicide, and suicide. Alcohol is involved in 2/3 of college student suicides and 95% of violent crime on campus.
We're talking about college drinking, binge drinking, and for many college students, underage drinking and the toll that it takes in the community. Let me introduce you to Doug Case, who is from San Diego State University. You are the coordinator as a member of the administration for the sororities and fraternities.
Right.
Do they get a bad rap in this? Because I know the statistics out of the emergency rooms in Boston say the typical admission for alcohol poisoning is going to be Caucasian, under 23, and a fraternity or sorority member. But those are just numbers. What's your experience?
I think you have to look at it from a balanced perspective. Your statistics are correct. There have been several studies that have shown that the highest incidence of high-risk drinking on the college campus occurs in the fraternity population. But there's been a lot of things that have been happening within the Greek population to change that. A lot of people are surprised to find out, for example, that the sorority houses are dry and never have had alcohol in them. And the fraternities have changed their policies so that they no longer have open parties. We have strict policies that prohibit kegger parties. And the university has adopted policies including a very strict zero tolerance policy on alcohol-related hazing. And so some of the behaviors within the Greek population have begun to change dramatically from what they were just a few years ago. It used to be that the Greeks were the social life on the campus. You went out any weekend and there'd be fraternity parties all over the campus. You go to San Diego State University on any given weekend now, and it'll be fairly quiet on Greek Row.
So in your opinion, it's a little more balance between fraternities, sororities, dormitories. Those are in independent living situations.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they are, and there are some differences between the residence halls and the Greek population. In the residence halls, at least in San Diego State, about 80% of the students living there are freshmen. And we know that that is the age group that is the most prone to high-risk drinking. But the difference in the residence halls are they have paid staff that deal with the issues, and they confront violations, and they refer them for interventions via counseling. In the sororities, they're dry, and they have live-in house directors. In the fraternities, they are off-campus. Most of them permit alcohol on their premises, although we have 2 fraternities at State that they're alcohol-free. But the difference in the fraternities are that they rely on volunteer student leadership to enforce their policies, and so it's always a challenge to do that.
Aaron Lomack, let me skip past you for just a second, Jen, if I may. You're the risk manager for the fraternity council, but you're a student. What is the risk manager? I think of that as somebody in a company who assesses risk for insurance companies and lawsuits and injuries on the job. What is it that you do for the fraternity council?
Basically, I'm the liaison kind of between the chapters on campus and with Doug, and I look at different policies and procedures, and I go traveling to different, like to GAMA, which is the Greeks Advocating Mature Management of Alcohol, like national conference, and bring back information on guest speakers and such like that to introduce and have them come to our campuses and speak.
Do you think the Greek system gets a bad rap when it comes to questions about drinking?
I'm a bit biased in that. Obviously, I'm a member of the Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity, and I was president of the house. I know, I mean, there's obviously a higher percentage of binge drinkers in the campuses and obviously in the fraternity system. However, it happens across the board. It happens in the residential halls. It happens in the apartment buildings around campus. It's just.
Can you help an old fogey like me understand the attraction of binge drinking? Because Sandra, in the beginning of the program, was saying it's not like you're sitting down and watching a ball game and having 2 or 3 beers over a period of time, or 4 beers over a period of time. It's like slam, bam, thank you, and then you got a problem.
Honestly, I wish I could. Help you see why it's so popular to binge drink. I've never found it appealing. I have to take care of my fraternity brothers when they do binge drink, and taking care of also like girls who are go to other houses or whatnot, and stop by our house and end up passing out. It's not something that's attractive. And
I always hated the throwing up part.
Oh yeah, it's horrible. You could walk through a fraternity house on a Friday or Saturday, Sunday morning, and the smell is something you.
There's
really
a reason to join, huh?
Exactly, yeah.
Jen Pei is a sophomore at UCSD. Now you're an RA. What's an RA?
Resident advisor. Basically, I have a building with me. It depends, buildings and floors, and you have residents. And varying between college campuses for UCSD and Raval College, we've got programs to do and things like that.
So what are your problems in it? So this is essentially a dormitory, is another word for residence hall.
Yes,
what's the situation there compared to what we've been talking about with the Greek system?
Well, res halls, once again, it varies, and there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to res halls and college campuses. Basically, you've got a bunch of first years within a college dorm, and they're going to try new things, and alcohol obviously is going to be one of them.
What can you do to them if you catch them, which I presume you do?
Yeah.
At times.
Once again, it varies, and for myself, I've never had any problems. I've been I've had students that are very, very cooperative. There haven't been big instances or anything like that, and when that does happen, we've got RSOs, which are the security officers around campus who can also help out.
Yeah, all the campuses have their own police departments. Yeah. Erin, how much of it is, let's see, I don't want to say this in front of everybody, but how much of this has to do with, if I get her drunk and it's a Friday night, or if I get drunk on a Friday night, inhibitions, they're gone. Does that play a role in this? It always has.
Obviously, I don't want to look at it that way, but
no, I don't know how you want to look at it, but how do you have to look at it?
I believe that your inhibitions drop significantly when you are, intoxicated, and I think both males and females alike go out on Friday, Saturday nights with, the thought of possibly going out and looking for someone to hook up with. So yeah, it does play a significant part.
And the risks just escalate. The more alcohol, the more often the opportunity for unprotected sex and all of the problems that go along with that.
Obviously the cases that come up of, date rape and stuff like that, but it's a matter of he said, she said, and alcohol's in there. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. And that's something else we're going to talk about more in just a moment, because it's really not, although the program is about alcohol, there are a lot of things now available for people to put in alcohol to intensify the effect or alter it altogether. We'll be back with more about college drinking after this.
Then 9th graders obtain alcohol from their own homes.
This is something we talked about earlier, too, the access of alcohol from friends and from family members. But what about policymakers? What do they think about parents hosting drinking parties? We talked to 2 of them about it.
Sometimes parents, in wanting to be good parents and show they're kind of liberated, will host things, and they feel that they might even be there, but they'll be making liquor available, alcoholic beverages available to kids who are underage. What we're trying to do is send them as clear a signal as everybody else. A, you don't want to do it. And B, at the end of the day, you've created some enormous liabilities for yourself.
Parents who repeatedly have parties at their homes where underage drinking is happening, we're gonna actually go after the parents. And they want to blame the kids and say, oh, it's just bad kids. But if they're creating that atmosphere where they're either purchasing alcohol for these young people, or they're allowing the drinking to happen in their homes, again and again and again, taking police resources out there and causing terrible problems in our neighborhoods, the parents need to be punished.
There are lots of people who end up and can end up responsible, not the least of which would be those who are serving underage or inebriated patrons, in a bar or a restaurant. Marcia Nordstrom is with us. She is the owner of the PB Bar and Grill. And you are also involved in an educational program trying to say to the service industry, to waiters and to bartenders, there are appropriate things to do and inappropriate things to do with alcohol.
Yeah, it's been a long uphill battle. We've been working very closely with a lot of the enforcement agencies and a lot of the prevention agencies to help give us guidance as to the best way to approach that, because to tell any type of a business owner or establishment owner that you have to train your employees, they're going to tell you there's no problem.
Because it's cutting into business.
That's right. Well, it's cutting into business. It's costly to do that. But a lot of business owners are like, you know, how are you going to tell your parent how to raise their child? It's difficult to tell a business owner how to run their business.
Did things change a little bit, Marcia, when it was decided in the courts at least that a bartender who's serving someone who is inebriated, obviously so, could be liable for an accident caused by that individual on the way home? That change anything? Because liability is always a worry in insurance.
That has been a great thing. Actually, it's been a great help because we do train our staff, we do train our employees, bartenders, doormen, security, they all get trained. But if the establishment is the only one who gets penalized, there's no incentive for the staff, who are kids like everybody else. You know, their friends go out drinking, they're the ones that they're serving. They are serving their own friends. They make money on the tips. So where's the incentive for them not to overserve? It has been very unfair, and the establishments have been clamoring for more awareness on the part of the public.
All right. Judy Stoffen is with us, and I apologize for saying Stefan when your daughter was on, but we won't tell. But what about this question of parents serving alcohol or providing alcohol for their kids?
Well, I think that a lot of young adults, you know, 18 to 20, do get their alcohol from their parents, and they've grown up with their parents drinking. They see their parents' house parties drinking, and they think that it's normal to drink when it isn't necessarily the norm to drink. And I think that's what we need to work on, is denormalizing the fact that when you become a college-age student that you need to drink. Hosting parties that wouldn't happen in our house. There would be no alcohol.
It's easier said than done, isn't it? Because a lot of young people do see their parents drink, and in most cases, handle it appropriately, not drive under the influence, etc. And they don't. It's hard to draw that line. It's almost to do what I say, not what I do.
Well, that's why, as a role model, my children have never seen me drink alcohol. I think that's important because we're role models, and parents that do host parties, I don't know if they realize the consequences of alcohol poisoning, DUI, deaths. There was a incident in Rancho Bernardo a couple of years back where a parent said that their children could stay at home and drink. They were 19-year-old boys. At 2 o'clock in the morning, they decided to go out and get cigarettes. And they crashed into a tree. 2 of the boys died, and the third one ended up in jail.
Larry Barnett is with us. You're the Chief of Security at USD?
Yes, sir.
I'm real curious about the issue that we raised with Marcia, and that is, say a student 21 provides alcohol for a student that's 18 or 19. What course do your officers take?
We will hold that person responsible for the providing of the alcohol. They'll be moved into our judicial system on campus. They can suffer consequences in terms of removal from halls, from resident halls, or even removal from school.
And if a student is cited or arrested for providing to a minor, they go into the full tilt judicial system beyond what might happen on the campus?
Actually, we have the ability to use 2 systems. We can place a student into the judicial system on campus, and we can also use the criminal justice system as well.
Okay, and who makes that call?
It'll depend on the situation.
Is it officer discretion?
Officer discretion.
And what kind of a problem do you think you have there? And I'm not saying USD specifically, but is this as big a problem as from the police point of view as we think?
No, it's definitely a big problem. I think one of the things we need to talk about also and focus on is what is happening as we've increased our enforcement on the campuses. We're starting to see a movement of the students off campus into home parties and into residence perhaps near the beach areas. And so now what we've done is we just shifted our problem to a new venue. So as a result of that, we created the College Law Enforcement Task Force. And this has given us an opportunity to bring the different law enforcement agencies together to tackle this problem together.
Now you can identify, at least in the city of San Diego, you can identify a physical piece of property and do something about people using alcohol on those premises.
Absolutely.
Stop it, actually.
Absolutely.
But what happens? What if the people move? The rule stays with the house, right?
The rule stays with the house. And that's where I think it's important, if we're talking particularly about college students, by having the buy-in with the universities where they're able to step in and then apply judicial sanctions as it relates back to the campus, I think it serves as a good deterrent.
Okay. And are all the universities and community colleges here fairly united on this? I know I've got the one report where all the presidents have signed up.
Absolutely.
So it's not as if you can go to one to get away from it
No,
from another.
no.
Right.
The idea of the task force was to get a collective group that would be able to address the
All
problems
right.
consistently.
Thank you, sir. We have more to come. We'll be right back. a.m., 38% of the pedestrians are between the ages of 18 and 20. And this is a very unique problem that other cities share, but in California it's almost all ours. And that is the availability of alcohol and a reduced drinking age of 18 in Mexico. And we talked to people about the policy, including the Secretary of Tourism from Baja.
Well, in San Diego, we're always going to have certain problems because of our proximity to the border. But I do think the police department has to be creative in what they're doing to police the border in that area, watch who's coming in and coming out, and seeing that the laws of America are being obeyed.
We can't close those bars down across on the other side of the border. We have closed them down here in this city, and I've been involved with a few of those. What we have to do is we have to continue to work at educating the kids that insist on going to these places and letting them know there's a responsible way to do it, and underage binge drinking isn't a part of it.
Well, we're just asking to use common sense. I mean, we cannot ask to change the laws in Mexico. Mexico says that you're allowed to drink at 18. It's not no matter if you drink at 18, but how much you drink at 18. So we're actually working with the people that work on restaurants and bars, so they will be using common sense as well, so they know when to stop serving drinks to young people.
We have three more guests to introduce you to, and let me start with Dr. Michael Seiss, who is an emergency room physician at Scripps Mercy Hospital, and almost fair to say an activist in the medical community about issues that affect public health and affect admissions to your room. You see the end result of all of this.
Well, we do. We're a trauma center, Marty, and we see folks injured in any kind of major accidents or crashes. And we've calculated that when underage drinkers come back across the border from Mexico, as many as 10,000 a night on regular weekends, up to 20,000 a night on holiday weekends, we see the effects up to 50 miles from the border in our trauma centers and in our emergency departments. The impact is staggering.
And by 50 miles, you mean that somebody's managed to drive that far before getting in an accident?
We mean up into Orange County, basically.
You also mentioned while we were talking earlier, we were talking about with Ashley about alcohol poisoning. Would you define it for us and then make the comment that you wanted to make about some of the additional drugs that keep getting into it?
Well, first of all, alcohol poisoning, you can drink yourself to death on any given day, literally. And the signs of alcohol poisoning are someone who you can't arouse after they've been drinking. They're passed out. You can't wake them up. Someone who vomits and doesn't wake up. Someone who's not breathing regularly, and someone who looks pale. But remember, if you've passed out or you're vomiting, you've got alcohol toxicity. You're on your way to alcohol poisoning. The other thing is we're seeing more and more young people who are being poisoned by club drugs, GHB, ecstasy, the other drugs, rohypnol, that are put in drinks that they don't realize they're getting, with sometimes deadly consequences.
Captain David Ramirez is with us from the San Diego Police Department. Can you explain a little bit about what your jurisdiction includes as these people come across the border? And what I mean by that is, what can you do? Obviously, if they're driving under the influence, your department or the Highway Patrol or the sheriff can stop them absolutely. But what about those who walk across?
Well, every Friday and Saturday night we do have extra officers that pretty much meet all the pedestrians that are coming across right as the border if they're walking across. We also work very closely with California Highway Patrol, and we run several operations
along the freeways and along the parking lots, because a lot of the people, they park their cars, they walk across, and they come back between 3, 6 in the morning, and they want to drive, and that's when we try to stop them before they get to the parking lots.
Well, Captain, if somebody's coming across and they get through customs and they're sort of weaving, they're obviously intoxicated, are they going to get arrested? They're going to get cited? They're going to get held until they sober up? What's going to happen?
Well, it depends on their level of intoxication, basically. And again, there's officer discretion.
But you can grab them up.
Yes, we try to take a zero tolerance posture, which means if we see anybody that looks like they've been drinking too much, we do stop them and talk to them, and then evaluate them whether they need to be arrested or depending on the situation.
Yves Olivier is also with us, the Undersecretary of Tourism for Baja. We saw Mr. Moreno on a moment ago, and the request, I mean, there have been a lot of statements made by him lately and a lot of efforts, it would seem, being made in northern Baja about this problem that goes back to, you know, when I was 15 years old and we were crossing into Mexico, even though the San Diego police are always trying to stop us, if you remember back that far. What is your position? What is the position of the government and the position of the bar owners and the restaurant owners in Tijuana? Tijuana, Mexicali, et cetera.
The whole state. You first have to understand that the problems that are caused for the U.S. side are also caused probably even bigger for us in Baja California. If you see any of our brochures, any of our marketing efforts, we don't market, come over to Baja California and drink and get wasted. But it happens, and it happens because there's an age difference. You heard laws are not going to change. We as a society don't have a problem because the Mexican kids are not the ones that are doing this. Socially in Mexico, it's not viewed well if you drink and get wasted. Mm-hmm. So it's a cultural difference. But again, we are doing a lot of efforts. Is it enough? Probably not. We need to do more to educate, I think, and inform.
But is it a function of some of the MTV programs and some of the news magazine programs that are glamorizing spring break in Mexico, spring break in Cancun, taking you all over the world? But northern Baja, it's almost, we were talking at dinner, it's almost formal now. This is a place to go during spring break. When I was a kid, we never thought about it. I don't think we even thought about spring break, frankly, except let's go to the beach and not go to school. But is it a little more formal now, do you think? The marketing effort, not the come get wasted, but the marketing effort of come to Mexico, it's 18, enjoy yourself.
I think it happens. I mean, it does happen. But again, our efforts are not focused on doing that. There's much more to do in Baja California than just come over and drink. Unfortunately, again, kids are going to drink, as has been pointed out before. Mm-hmm. They are going to do it in the streets. They are going to do it in the colleges. They are going to do it everywhere, anywhere. In this case, what they see about going to Baja is an experience besides drinking. It's different. The language, the food, everything is different. And it's just an experience.
Yeah. Dr. Seiss, one last question for you. Of the admissions to the emergency room, in the general sense, stabbing victims, automobiles, motorcycle accidents, you name it, how often is alcohol involved, alcohol a factor?
Alcohol and drugs, but predominantly alcohol, is a factor in 50 to 60% of all our ED admissions. And if we focus just on trauma, motor vehicle crashes, assault, gunshot wounds, it's 60 to 70%.
But it is possible to reduce the number, but it's not a problem that's ever going to go away?
I don't accept that, Marty. Look at the way we've changed the way we think about smoking in California. 50% of the American adults smoked in 1963. It's down to 20%. I don't accept that we can't change it.
You think we can do it?
I think we have to.
Will the alcohol industry cooperate?
Our kids' lives are at stake.
I know. Will the alcohol industry cooperate?
Well, it's about time to take it to them.
All right. Dr. Seiss, thank you. We'll be right back. Set rules and expectations and enforce them. Eat dinner together routinely. Help with homework. Monitor TV, internet use, and music choices. Know their friends and whereabouts. Send clear messages about alcohol abuse. Discuss the negative consequences of drinking. Give your perspective on the media's messages about alcohol. Don't accept underage drinking as a rite of passage. We are back now. Let me introduce Susan Mitchell, who is, you're the Director of Health Counseling Services at UCSD San Marcos, but you've been in the California State University system most of your career, for 27 years.
27 years, that's correct.
How have you seen this problem change?
Well, it's definitely a problem, and our students definitely have issues. They put themselves at high risk, and I think it's the high risk that is of particular concern to those of us in the higher education community, and what we can do to really ameliorate or mitigate that risk.
And do you think you're successful?
I think we're working very hard to try to do that. And I think as we look at the environmental approach and really try to work at it not on just an educational individual approach to students, but really looking at policies, different programs that we can do, and also working with the broader community with law enforcement as well as health and human services agencies, we're more successful.
You know, some of the research I was looking at that was done for the county, there were two things that struck me. One is that such a majority of people in the county feel that the advertising industry is advertising to underage drinkers. And secondly, I want to welcome the Reverend Roland Slade, who's from Meridian Baptist Church. A parent, you're also a teacher, you're trying to get kids to move on with their lives. The other thing that seemed apparent from those statistics is there's a sense in the minority community and in economically disadvantaged communities that they're being targeted by alcohol advertising that then has an adverse effect on the community. And I'm just wondering what you think about that.
Well, Marty, I think you're right. You know, that we've seen that it's targeted towards them. Again, being that it's cool, that it's the thing to do, that it's going to make you the big bad man on campus or man in the community. And that's not true.
What successes have you had with this issue, either parentally or at school or at church for that matter?
Well, I use 6 points. When I'm talking to young people, even to my own 17-year-old son. First, stressing academics, then looking at the affiliation of the college that he's looking at going to, whether it's a religious school or non-religious school, whether it's part of the Cal State system or the UC system, then the cost, the location, the size of the school, and the student body. And when I talk about the student body, that's talking about the environment and the atmosphere on the campus. And our plan is to go to campus with him to check it out.
Some schools do have reputation. I was asking one of our employees who went to the University of Colorado, and he almost said, you got to understand it's the University of Colorado in Boulder, as if that excused it. I know there are a number of schools that seem to have this reputation. But do you agree with that, Susan? I would suspect so.
That different schools have reputations?
Yeah, and that what the Reverend is saying is true. You have to go look at the student as a parent and as a student, what kind of an environment it's going to be.
Yes, I do agree, and I think that's why it's really important, either as a parent or those of us in higher education are trying to do as much as we can to really look at the environment and what can we do to affect that.
What would you like to see in terms of public policy change that would make a difference? I know NBC just knuckled under to pressure to not run alcohol spots late at night, although they were not directly, well, they were directly ads, but they were to encourage some judgment while drinking. But NBC decided not to run them. Do you need to see the advertising change as public policy? Do we need to see billboards change as public policy? What has to happen?
Well, I definitely think that advertising encourages students to drink, whether they're underage or even overage. And so I think that is definitely one of the factors, and we need to look at that very closely.
Reverend, if you could change one thing in terms of public policy.
I would definitely change the age in which we can even drink in California.
2, you raise it.
Raise it, 25.
You know, if you have a 17-year-old son, you want to do the same thing with a driver's license, don't you?
Well, he just got his driver's license Friday.
Oh, good luck. Good luck. We'll be right back. One of the questions we're left with is, well, what do you do? And probably the answer is everything that you can. But Angela, quickly?
Well, I think it's a complicated problem, and we can't do one thing. Young people can help by telling us what's going on, watching out for their peers. Parents can do what they can to inform their kids about what's going on. But we also, the rest of us, build a world that says, come drink. And so retailers can stop selling, the industry can stop marketing, you know, policymakers can change our communities so that it's a healthier place to live.
All of this will be part of the county's drug summit that is coming up. I want to show you this also. We mentioned earlier that all of the universities and colleges, whether it's Augie Gallego at the community colleges all the way through USD, UCSD, San Marcos, San Diego State, have all signed off on this policy, and it is a plan to reduce underage drinking and try and reduce binge drinking. Some of these folks will be staying around to chat. Here's the website, www.nbcsandiego.com. Thank you for joining us, and log on now to the net for more questions.